So in order to do the Qcup method, this is the best way that I think you guys should do it. First, you go to your e-class. Log in, go to e-class. See your assignment for the day, scroll down to assignments. Of course, you gotta wait for it to load, the activity feed. And generally right here, it's being kind of wacky right now, but we're gonna get it situated. You wanna look over your daily agenda. So today's Wednesday, August 19, 2020, and our AKS that we're going to cover is AKS 2, which you are to determine theme and trace its development. The learning target is that I can dissect what I read to gain clarity of the author's message. Our opening will usually be a student-focused or derived question and answer that teacher and student creates that directly connects to text and personally to the student and teacher. That was kind of what we did on the day that we said, what does family mean to you? You guys put that together. We're gonna start working on more topics daily, but today I just want to get an overview of how to navigate the class. The work period. Students will perform a Qcup analysis of paragraphs 3 through 6 of Block Party. And the closing, students will write an objective summary comparing the thoughts of days, lessons prior to learning versus after learning. So what you reflect on before you knew what we learned today, and then what you now know after learning. And the idea is for you to learn something different than what you knew before. You scroll down to your assignments. As usual, you got I have your assignments right here. And you're gonna click on your Zoom link so you can get into the Zoom. Yeah, everybody is pretty much doing on a regular basis, but you wanna read through the whole class assignment. You Google class code here, SQ6BLIP. And I also have links to anything that we may be covering, like I have the link to Block Party right here. And of course, if you missed this live Zoom session, you record a session in Google Classroom. And you are to implement the strategy for paragraphs 3 through 6 of the story Block Party and submit it in Google Classroom. So after you look through that stuff, you go up to your Google Classroom. I think your view might look a little different given that you're the student and I have the teacher view. Log in. This is our Google Classroom. My other class with Ms. Wall, you'll click on the one with me. Then you go into your stream. And the stream is going to be exactly the same as what e-class. Look over that. You go to classwork. Then you'll go click on your classwork assignment and view assignment. So this is telling me what you guys have done, turned in, and assigned and whatnot. So in order to best navigate how to turn stuff in, I would say for example, we're going over Block Party. You want to click on the PDF here, the videos and resources here at the bottom. So the Block Party PDF, you open that up. And given that you're conducting a Qcup analysis of Block Party, You may also want to open up the link for Qcup. So here I have a video and the picture. So the video is what I recorded on the day that was a couple days ago that I went over the whole Qcup strategy right here, that Zoom video. And here is a condensed version of that. It's just a picture of what Qcup is all about. So if you remember the video fairly well, you can just go to the condensed version, pull that up at the same time. And you kind of think, okay, so I'm about to go through the question portion of Qcup. And what do I need to do? Survey the text features and turn them into guiding questions. Formulate other questions before, during, and after reading. So there should be 3 questions for the Q. You need to have a question before you read it, a question that you have while you're reading it, and a question that you would have after you read it. So let's go to block party. And you'll read the first 2 paragraphs to get that done. So we lived in the dark green hills of Pittsburgh, where the smoke from JL Steel dusted our clothes gray and blanketed the sky, causing sunsets to streak bright pink and orange. Streetcar wires crisscrossed overhead, making purchase for the hungry crows who fled high when the lumbering cars came. So you might stop, you say, for your first question, and say, okay, this story is called Block Party. Your first question may be, why is this story called Block Party, right? It's before you start reading question. So you go over to your document for your answer. First question is, why is this story Block Party? Example. Now you may have many other questions before you read it. Why are the letters this way? Why are they all over the place like that? Who is Jewel Parker Rhodes? I wonder who that is. That may be a question for you. You lived in the dark green hills of Pittsburgh. You may have just noticed that first sentence. What are dark green hills? Any question, whatever question that comes to mind before you get into the text, write it down. That's your first part of Qcup, right? So then you go ahead and start reading it. First 2 paragraphs. We lived in the dark green hills of Pittsburgh, where the smoke from JL Steel dusted our clothes gray and blanketed the sky, causing sunsets to streak bright pink and orange. Streetcar wires crisscrossed overhead, making purchase for the hungry crows who flew high when the lumbering cars came, spewing electric sparks. Sometimes we put pennies in the metal tracks and wait for them to be squashed flat as the streetcars rumbled over them, carrying passengers down the hills into the heart of the city that rested by the 3 rivers, Ohio, Monongalia, and Allegheny. So during that, you may have had a question. If you're paying attention to your reading, you say, a streetcar wires. What is a streetcar wire? That might be a question of yours, because if you're not from the north, or you've never seen streetcars, you probably wouldn't know what that is. And you're saying it crisscrossed overhead. A car is above my head. How is that happening? So you might want to write that question down. It's your second question. 2. You may even wonder, are these flying cars? from the future. These are things you need to figure out if you're reading to have a better understanding of what you're reading. It was not written from the future, by the way. It's streetcars are actually an old thing. It's something from the past. And you will want to dive into, you might want to do a Google search to figure the stuff out. Why is it called Block Party? You'll figure that out later with your reading. What are streetcars? You might want to do a Google search and look that up, see what a streetcar is. And it'll give you more details and you'll have a better understanding. So we go back to the story. Second paragraph. But what I remember most about growing up in Pittsburgh was living in a neighborhood where everyone acted like a relative, an aunt, an uncle, a brother, or a sister. Lots of women acted like my mother, bossing me, feeding me. Many would hold me on their laps and tell me stories about High John the Conqueror or John Henry. Some felt no shame in whipping out a comb and fixing my hair when they thought I looked too raggedy. In days when I was lucky, one of my neighborhood mothers would jump up in the circle and join me in a waist-twisting, hip-rolling hula hoop. Sometimes it drove me crazy to have so many mothers, but it also made me feel safe. My real mother was gone, divorced from us, living in another city, but I lived with my dad, my grandparents, an aunt, a sister, and a cousin whom I called sister. Okay, so we have the first part of the Qcup almost complete anyway. We have you asking questions before, you ask questions during, and now you want to ask questions after you're reading. So you're thinking about what question might you have after you read that point. For me, I'm questioning, where is his mother? Why is she divorced from them? Another question that stood out to me, the author said, no one had a problem with whipping out their combs and fixing my hair when they thought I looked a little too raggedy. Most of the time when you think about somebody fixing someone's hair, is a girl, right? So I'm wondering, is the author a girl? You have a lot more context as to what you're reading. And then you might think to look back into the author, Jewel Parker Rhodes. Okay, she's writing about herself. So Jewel is probably a girl. You might want to look and do a Google search to check that out. Who is the author? Jewel Parker Rhodes. Let's do a Google search. Boom, and there you go. This is a woman who was talking about when she was a little girl. Jewel Parker Rhodes. This is the author. It'll give you much more context when you're reading if you ask the question. All right, so this is the Q portion of Qcup. And you can actually label this until you really get accustomed to how everything is working. I would suggest that you label it. All right. So let's move to the C component of Qcup. All right, then you'll go back to your document to have a better idea what Qcup stands for in E-class. Uh-oh. I went out of sharing the screen. So you go back to E-class. How can I do that and share at the same time? Not E-class, but Google Classroom. Pull up that picture again so you have a good idea. What does that C stand for in Qcup? Circle. Circle unknown or keywords. Given that we're digital here, we're not going to really be able to, unless you're really savvy with the computer, you can't really circle stuff, right? Some of you probably can, but I don't know how to do that yet. So you're going to circle unknown or keywords. So when you read through this, just skim through it and see if there are any words that you don't know or not familiar with. What first stands out to me are the names of these rivers. And again, they're not really that important as far as vocabulary, learning vocabulary, because it's a proper noun that it's like saying someone's name. Not that a person's name isn't important, it's just that it's not something that's going to be very pertinent to the theme or the message in the story. The theme or the message of the story isn't going to change if you don't know what this particularly means. Like we were talking about my name. Go ahead.
My internet's really bad, so if I'm leaving and joining back, that's why my internet's just.
Okay, that's fine. So if you don't know the meaning of a proper name, it's not going to change the message of anything. Like I was just saying, what my name Bernorris means. I told you guys it means health and wealth, replenishes, right? But if I put my name throughout the story and you don't know that, it's not going to change anything. However, if you go to this story and it's some felt no shame about whipping out a comb and fixing my hair. If you don't know what whipping means in this situation, you might lose the idea of what the author is trying to say. Because sometimes whipping means what? It means to beat somebody with a switch or a belt or something. In this particular scenario, that's not what it means. It means to take out very fast. They take a comb out very fast and start working on their head. So you might circle that word, whipping. Another word that may not be particularly familiar to you guys is, I would say maybe divorce, but you guys know what divorce means. Or lumbering. Lumbering, if you don't know what lumbering means, you will circle that word. But instead of circling, we're going to write or type words that we don't know. So I will go with lumbering and whipping. So you may want to look those words up as well and see what they mean. All right, now we'll go back. If there were only 2 words in that particular section that you didn't know or were not familiar to you, you just go back to the reading and to the Qcup and say, hey, let me look at my Qcup reading strategy again, the picture. It says underline. Underline the main idea or author's message. You may need to underline for other reading purposes. Okay, so the main idea. Then we'll go back and we'll read through it again. What is the main idea of these sections? So just skimming through it again, what would I consider the main idea? Like my mother. The main idea is something that's kind of implied. It's not directly stated. But if you were to read through this, the main idea is this whole community of family. He's talking about, well, she's constantly talking about her brother, uncle, sister. She was talking about her mother, and then she was talking about the women in the neighborhood. They didn't mind bossing. So it's this whole idea of family. That's the main idea, and how a family operates. So you can't underline, of course. So you go to the U. What does this U mean in Qcup? The main idea. And now we're the P. Stuff smaller so it all fit on one page. All right. And you go back to your Qcup if you haven't remembered what everything means. So P is for paraphrase. Paraphrase the ideas of each paragraph in the margin. So as you remember from the video, paraphrasing means to put in your own words. Now we don't have to write a whole paragraph. We're just gonna maybe a couple of sentences or a few sentences for each. So to paraphrase this, we lived in the dark green hills of Pittsburgh where the smoke from JL Steel dusted our clothes gray and blanketed the sky, causing sunsets to streak bright pink and orange. Streetcar, so let's just paraphrase that first one real quick. The author grew up in Pittsburgh in a dusty city. Simple enough, right? It's too big. Pittsburgh. City. All right. So we'll go back and to continue. Streetcar wires crisscrossed overhead, making purchase for the hungry crows who flew high when the lumbering cars came, spewing electric sparks. So when the streetcars came, and by this time you should have really researched to see what a streetcar is if you're not familiar, because you had all those questions up there, right? So you go to your Google search, streetcar. That may even be one word. Yep. And then you might go to images. Just so you have a better idea of what a streetcar is. Boom, there we go. That's one version of a streetcar. So, but they were talking about the streetcar was overhead, right? So you might want to say overhead streetcar or flying streetcar. So this was long ago. The streetcar thing was something that was really long ago. Well, it's probably like 70s, 60s and stuff. And they had the wires that they were connected to help them go. Where are some with wires? Okay, here we go. So see this wire here above the streetcar? The streetcar won't go if it's not connected to that. And whenever it was riding down the street, pigeons or crows, did she say crows? And she said crows would fly away whenever this pole would get near them because they'd be scared and it'll be sparking sparks because it was ran by electricity. So those creatures would fly away whenever the metal tracks and wait for them to come across. So the crows, hungry crows, flew high when the lumbering cars came, spewing electric sparks. So the streetcar wires crisscross overhead, making purchase is what a bird likes to do. That's what it's called when they stop somewhere. It's called perching. For the hungry crows who flew high when the lumbering cars came. Lumbering means big and heavy, like you saw in the picture. So if you were not to look further into this, you may think that it's flying cars, but no, it's not a flying car. It's a big, like a bus kind of, that is attached to a wire. The wires are over your head, and the birds were on those wires until the bus came down and it was sparking those sparks, and it caused the birds to fly away. Sometimes we put pennies in the metal tracks and wait for them to be squashed flat as the streetcars rumbled over them. Okay, so Arthur grew up in Pittsburgh, in a dusty city. And that's one paragraph. If we go back, the streetcar, take a look at the streetcar again, so you have a good idea. Streetcars are riding on tracks just like railroad trains. See that? These tracks right here. And this is what the author was talking about. She put pennies down on the tracks. This is this heavy lumbering. Lumbering is another word for heavy. Would roll over the penny and it will squish it flat. Okay. And that would be for paragraph 1. And you do the same thing for paragraph 2. As far as the people portion of paraphrasing it. But what I remember most about growing up in Pittsburgh was living in a neighborhood where everyone acted like a relative, an aunt, an uncle, a brother, or a sister. Lots of women acted like my mother, bossing me and feeding me. All right, we'll go back, paraphrase that small component right there. You already did paragraph 1 right here. Now you're paraphrasing paragraph 2. The author most remembers like see, it's a different way of saying everyone acted like a relative, an aunt, uncle, brother. That's the same thing as family. So you can just paraphrase it, break it down. The author remembers most about growing up was everyone acted like family. Lots of women acted like mother, bossing me around. That's 3 sentences. I just condensed into 1. You still get the idea of what she's talking about just by condensing it down to everyone acted like family. Many would hold me on their laps and tell me stories about High John the Conqueror or John Henry. Same part of that. That's sentence number 4. I just put it into 1. That's acting like family. Some felt no shame about whipping out a comb and fixing my hair when they thought I looked too raggedy. Same. It's 5 sentences I condensed into 1. In days when I was lucky, and one of my neighborhood mothers would jump in the circle and join me in waist twisting, hip rolling hula hoop. Sometimes it drove me crazy to have so many mothers, but it also made me feel safe. So you can condense that into your document. I had a lot of fun with my neighborhood family. They sometimes made crazy, but I felt safe with them. Okay. That's 3 sentences I put into two. Sometimes it drove me crazy to have so many mothers, but it also made me feel safe. My real mother was gone, divorced from us, living in another city. But I lived with my dad, my grandparents, an aunt, a sister, and a cousin, whom I called sister. So we can break that down a little bit more. The author's parents were divorced. Still out. Great family and many mothers, regardless. And that's it. That would be how you would do a Qcup of the first two paragraphs. And this is what I'm wanting you guys to turn in. And in order to turn in your work, just go to, most of you already know this, but for those of you who may not, just go to Google Classroom and go to classwork. Give it a little time to upload properly. Make sure you go to your correct class. Go to classwork. Click on the assignment. And you have a different view for me. So I think for you guys here, it says, submit assignment, and just click on your link and on the untitled document, and you put it in. And that's pretty much it. So if you guys did not do the assignment the way that I did it, go ahead and do that. And for paragraphs 1 and 2, and I had 3 through 6 assigned for the day, but you can go ahead and do that for tomorrow instead, because a lot of you don't think you had a good idea of what to do and how to do it. And if anybody has some questions, you can feel free to ask me now or in the chat, or later. You can send me an email, and that's pretty much your options. But if no one has any questions, you can feel free to go ahead and start working on that. And you can use a lot of what I just did, because I do want you to get just the basics of how to do this first, and in detail, doing it the right way. You can use this as much. I mean, don't do it word for word, but you can be pretty close to it, because it's not going to change up a lot from what I have here. And go ahead and submit it in Google Classroom, and that'll be it. If anybody wants to hang out, you can feel free to do that, or you can go ahead and log off and work on your own. Does anybody have any questions? No. All right. If you don't have any questions, just go ahead and do your thing and let me know. And if you're having computer issues, just go ahead and you can check out the recorded Zoom. I'm gonna upload that into Google Classroom as well. And I have like a little section at the bottom of the classwork pages, and